All right. Hello, Lindsay. Thank you for joining us today. Looking forward to chat with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the Jericho Road musical?
Sure. Well, let me say thank you. I really appreciate the invitation to talk about it. It's very exciting. We're only 2 weeks out from performances now. And the musical is being produced at Pacific Union College. We're a small liberal arts college up here in the north end of the Napa Valley, on a hill. It's only in 2 weeks, so we're starting to get really excited. Pacific Union College is on the top of Howe Mountain, and that's right at the north end of the Napa Valley. So we're just up the hill from St. Helena, if you're familiar with the area, and it's about a 30-minute drive from Napa.
Okay. Oh, very cool. So, what's the plot? Like, what can you share with us a little bit about what's going to happen during the musical?
Absolutely. So Jericho Road, in some ways, is your typical girl meets boy, girl and boy fall in love and get married story. But this one is about a young Christian couple who meet, fall in love, get married, and have a baby. And that all happens in the first act. But toward the end of the first act, Jacob Carver that's the name of the lead character. He realizes that married life isn't working out as he expected it to, and he begins fighting with his wife. The marriage becomes unstable, and he ends up having an affair and leaving his wife, Layla. So that all happens in the first act. In the second act, or the second half of the show, is very much Layla trying to deal with her husband leaving her and wrestling with some really big questions like, how can I be faithful to a husband who's been unfaithful to me? And how can I be faithful to a God who appears to be absent and to have left me in this difficult situation? So that's the plot of the show in a nutshell.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you for sharing. So, if in past years when people have, or in the past when people have gone, like, what are some, I don't know, what are some cool like comments? Like, what was their experience like seeing the show? What did they think?
Sure. So the show's been produced 3 times before. I am a university professor, and this is my fourth musical. This was produced at my last university, Avondale University in Australia. So we produced the show there, and then in Sydney, and then it was produced by an independent theatre company in Perth, right across the country. And audiences from all of the productions had really similar responses. The kinds of words they used were raw, powerful, emotional, moving. A few people said troubling. And I guess that's perhaps for two reasons. Firstly, we don't discuss divorce a lot in our circles. I suppose it's definitely something that happens and that most, if or many of us, have to deal with, whether it's in our own lives and with families and relationships, or with friends or friends of friends. So I think seeing a story about a relationship breakdown is confronting. But the second thing is, the show actually has 3 different endings. So it's written to be performed over 3 nights, and depending on which night you go to, you'll see a different ending. So I think audiences were curious about how that would play out, but also none of the endings have a really firm resolution. This is a really difficult topic to talk about, and I certainly didn't want to close off the story with a nice, neat moral bow. Instead, each of the 3 nights have a slightly ambiguous ending. There is some sense of closure there, but it's still slightly open. And as I said, each night it ends differently. So there's a slight feeling of being unsettled. Usually you go to a show and you walk out and everyone's laughing. When you come to this show, it's, I think, a really moving, challenging story, and audiences across the board have commented on how emotionally moving and spiritually challenging it is, but also that it just propels people into discussion. Wow, I really identified with this particular character or this particular part, and what would I have done if that was in my situation, if I was in that situation. Those are the kinds of questions that the musical is designed to generate, and so far that seems to have been they seem to be the main responses from audiences.
Interesting. So people can go to the event on 3 different nights, and
Mm-hmm.
there'll be a different ending every time.
That's right. So if you come on Thursday night, which is the opening night, you'll see a full show with a complete ending, although slightly ambiguous. But if you come to the second night, as well as the first night, you see the same show with 2 different endings and so forth. So you can come to one night and see a full show, or you come to 3 nights and see 3 different possible ways the story could have ended, for Jake and Layla. And the third ending actually is a new one. I've written it just for this production, and for this production team. So no one's seen it before, which is kind of exciting. And there's an extra song in it. So you wouldn't see the extra song on the Thursday or Friday nights, but audiences on Saturday night will, there will be 16 songs in the show instead of 15.
Cool. Um, so I guess I'm kind of curious. So you wrote, did I hear that correctly? You produced it. Like what type of contribution did you make? Did you write the plot, the scenes? What was that? What was that like?
Yeah, it happened pretty quick. Well, it happened very slowly and very quickly. Like I said, I'm an English professor. This is actually my fourth musical. So I started writing music when I was about 16 years old, and I produced my first musical when I was 19 years old. It was very basic. I actually left the church for a year, and writing music for me has been an act of prayer, an act of worship. When I am feeling overwhelmed or have big questions in life that I'm wrestling with, I often wrestle them out with God at the piano. And when I left the church for a year, I was about 18 years old. And during that year, I wrote a lot of music. Actually, one or two of the songs from that period are in the show. Um, in any case, at the end of that year, I was challenged by a pastor to his request for the congregation was to pray and hold out your hands and ask God, what's in your hands? And I did that during a church service when I'd come back, and I just had the strongest impression that the Lord was telling me to go home and have a look in the piano seat at my house. So I thought that's a little bit weird, but it was a very strong impression. So I did that, and I opened the piano seat, and here were all of these lyrics to songs that I had written during that year, and I put them all out on the floor, and they told the story of my journey of questioning and doubting and being angry, very, very angry at God, but actually angry at myself. And then a song that I'd written at the end called "Softly and Tenderly," which was about how the Lord had called me back. And yeah, I just called a group of friends and said, "Hey, I think I have a musical here." And they were wonderful. They said, if you've got a musical, we want to be in it. So we just put together a small show for our church, and that was my first musical. The second, I adapted a book for the stage. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. It was produced as a film last year. Well, I wrote a musical, and I contacted Francine, and she was so gracious. She had at that stage sold the rights. I think she was negotiating the rights for the film company, so she couldn't give me the stage rights, but they very generously allowed us to perform it just once, and I did that at my university where I was still a student. So that was a dream come true. It was amazing. And then the third one was called Runaway, and it was a a modern story of the prodigal. And then this one actually came about in a response to a musical that I loved. Jason Robert Brown is a fabulous, fabulous writer, and he wrote a musical called The Last 5 Years, which was a boy meets girl, fall in love, marriage falls apart story. And I was obsessed with it. I just listened to it over and over again until I felt really convicted a few years into my obsession with this musical that it was teaching me how to do relationship all wrong. And that was that idea or that thought came as a revelation to me, and I just stopped me in my tracks and I prayed and I said, Lord, show me where I can find some music that will teach me how to do relationship right. And again, that response, that strong urge that is, when you're a Christian, you learn to hear the voice of the Spirit and recognize it. And it was so strong. And the response in that moment was, Lindsay, you're going to write it. So Jericho Road is my response to The Last 5 Years. I asked myself the question, what would happen if that couple were Christian? And more specifically, Adventist. I'm Seventh-day Adventist. And so I set about writing or rewriting that story of a young couple who have, really idealistic views of marriage and relationships. And I pulled some songs that I'd written in the past, and I wrote a few for the show. And then I wrote the script. The script came in a rush. And the idea for the endings came out of a class I was teaching. I was teaching about closure to my students, and trying to teach them how closure always comes with a moral, right? And I thought, oh, how am I going to avoid, having some kind of moralistic ending here? I didn't want it to be didactic. I didn't want it to be, this is how you should do it. I thought, oh, I could write alternate endings, and that kind of unpacks it. And I could make those endings, a little bit ambiguous, and that would help as well. So that's where the idea for the musical came about, and the process was very long in terms of writing the music and very short in terms of writing the script. I don't read music very well. I was a very poor piano student as a child. So I pretty much do everything by ear. And when it came time to score, because I write everything on the piano, when it came time to score for the orchestra, I really struggled to find someone to help me. But I had two students at my university who were music students, and they said, Lindsay, please let us have a go at this. So I gingerly handed over the songs, and God bless them. You can hear the soundtrack on Spotify and hear what they came up with. One of my students, he was a freshman at the time. He wrote he arranged 14 of the tracks, and then another student did 2, and that can't be right. He must have done 12. She must have done 2. And then we were running out of time at the end. And so I decided it was time to try my hand at arranging, and I've arranged 2 of the songs as well. So that all happened over the summer of 2016, 2017 in a rush. And then we performed. The very first performance was in March, I believe, of that year. So I say summer, that's actually Christmas in Australia. So we started writing in November, December, and we finished mid-January, and we performed in March. And then we recorded the album in November of that year. So I hope that answers your question. It's a very long answer to the question, but it was both a very long and very short development time for the musical, but all worth it, worth every minute.
I know the events you mentioned about 2 weeks out. What days does it take place?
Yeah, so we're performing on February 23, 24, and 25 up here at Pacific Union College. That's a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. The reason we're not doing it on Friday, Saturday, Sunday is that these are college students and they're getting ready for finals. We're on the quarter system up here. So I thought I'd give them a day to have a breather. And we've got a lot of people coming in from out of town as well. So Saturday night's going to be the big performance, and if anybody from the Bay Area would like to make the trek up the hill, it will be well worth it.
And where specifically will the event be held? Where what's I see it's at Paul and Paul. Is that right?
That's right. Paulin Center for the Arts is a performing arts venue here on campus. This is a pretty well, a very well-established campus. Pacific Union College has been here since the early 1900s. We're very excited to be renovating Paulin Center for the Arts here. And actually, the show will be used as a promotion for some fundraising that we're doing to redo the hall, which is really exciting. So the venue sits about 450 people comfortably. If people haven't been to Pacific Union College before, it's super easy to find. You come straight up Howell Mountain Road, and a college, actually, this is a picture of it behind me here, from the air. The college sits right on top of the hill in Angwin up here, and Paulin Center for the Arts is one of the first entries into the college. We'll have signs for people who haven't been here before to tell them where to park, and how to find the venue.
Very cool. So if someone wanted to register for the event, where can they go?
Fantastic. So we have an Eventbrite site, and you can simply Google Eventbrite with Jericho Road or Jericho Road Musical, and you'll very easily find it. You can buy tickets for 1 night, 2 nights, or all 3 nights if you're curious about each of the 3 endings.
Yes. And for those of you who are interested in attending, here in the Bay, we'll have links below the video for you to be able to register. Well, Lindsay, I just want to say thank you again for joining us today to talk about the Jericho Road musical. It was really nice.
Thank you. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk about it. We are such a small college up here, but we've got amazing talent with our students, faculty, and staff. And it's so thrilling to be able to share this story with people, and to share the talent of our students. So really grateful for the opportunity to tell people about it. Thank you, Travis, and hope to see you at the show too.